We have a legal, moral and cultural obligation to safely accommodate refugees and asylum seekers. Ireland has requirements under international law to have systems to receive refugees and allow individuals to apply for asylum. We also have moral responsibilities to help people escaping violence or individuals being persecuted because of their faith or sexuality. Thirdly, as a nation, we have a long history of emigration. It would be beyond hypocritical if we didn't try and support and help immigrants integrate. It's important to outline those principles because they are being intentionally muddied and rejected by some people. There are small groups of agitators only interested in spreading misinformation, and that is causing hate and fear. It's also important to note that in the week of anniversaries of marriage equality and repeal, that these groups also oppose LGBT+ rights and want to remove a woman's right to choose. Unfortunately, these vile messages have become easier to spread after COVID, with too many people relying on unverified sources and rumours for their news. In response, as public representatives, we have the choice to stoke up fears or to help alleviate concerns and work towards solutions. Today, we should be focused on the best ways to address challenges of accommodating refugees and asylum seekers and ensuring that people understand the facts. After President Putin's unilateral attack, the Irish public showed sustained support for the Ukrainian people. Communities across the country mobilised to offer assistance, and many Irish households took families in. Most quickly became involved in their local communities through sports teams, tidy towns, community groups. Children have already integrated into our schools, and in many cases, in areas like mine, they've saved rural schools from closure. To be fair, the government response, particularly in the early months, was significant. There was a strong sense of immediacy and cooperation. However, as the situation has continued, Minister O'Gorman, one minister, one department, has been left with the sole responsibility. I know the Taoiseach's eager to say that there's a whole of government response, but there's no evidence of that. While I acknowledge the distinct pressures that the minister is facing, that can't justify asylum seekers being left to fend for themselves on the streets. Given no alternatives, people have had to pitch tents outside the International Protection Accommodation Services. And then in a truly disgusting scene, a small group attacked the camp less than 2 weeks ago. The government has failed in its duty to protect these people. Although this point was never in doubt, it has been underlined by the recent High Court ruling concerning the failure to provide international protection applicants with material reception conditions, and that's unlawful. An Afghan asylum seeker had to take this case after they were told that accommodation would be provided once it was available, and they were sent on their way onto our streets with nothing but a €28 Duns voucher. How was that ever justifiable? Presumably this was department policy. We're all aware of the extreme oppression of the Afghani people and what they've experienced at the hands of the Taliban, and then an individual fleeing that regime is just given a voucher and told good luck. Mr. Justice Meenan was very clear in his ruling. Even though the Minister is making efforts to secure accommodation, this does not absolve him of his obligations under the regulations. Clearly, giving the applicant a €28 voucher for a supermarket and then the addresses of private charities does not come close to what is required. Can the Minister clarify what is currently happening to individuals who are applying for asylum? If a woman is escaping severe suppression by the Taliban, or a gay man fleeing one of the 64 countries that have laws criminalising homosexuality applies for asylum today, what are they being told, or what are they being offered? Then there are the larger issues with the asylum system. I'm regularly contacted by constituents concerned that in addressing the Ukrainian crisis, the promised reforms of direct provision have been sidelined. And I have to agree with them. I think we all understood that there would be delays when we found out how many people would be coming into the country that we couldn't have anticipated. But recommendations in the Catherine Day report have not been implemented. The state's response for Ukrainians has shown that it is possible to allow those fleeing violence the opportunity to take up work and be issued PPSNs, while those in direct provision are waiting months for a temporary residence certificate and have highly restrictive working permissions. Yes, the Minister has considerable challenges, but just as people in direct provision are left in limbo for years, it is increasingly looking like the reforms of the system are also being left in limbo. In my final 15 seconds, Minister, the last thing I want to say is that when people are coming in to communities, because there isn't any government communication in an area, what happens is something else fills that void that's there. And it's misinformation, and it scares other people. And it leaves many, I think, opposition TDs attending meetings where we're trying to alleviate fears, trying to reassure people that there is a plan, doing all of these things that, quite frankly, the government should be doing. But I don't think it's too late to bring in a plan that just doesn't allow that space to be created where people can say, nobody told us, nobody did anything, just help us. And I think it would be easier for everybody.